Okay, the Torah portion for this week, everybody, is Toldot, and it's defined different ways as generations or family history. It's found in Genesis 25:19 through 28, verse 9. The Haftarah portion is Malachi 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 7. And the Brit Hadashah portion is Matthew chapter 10, verse 21 through 38. And we'll take a look at the pictograms and the numbers fairly quickly here. Okay, so we start out with the letter Tav, and the letter Tav is crossed poles, and it would also represent the tree of sacrifice. And it's a mark, a sign, or a signature, and it's the number 400. And the number 400 means a sign, a mark, or the last. Okay? And if we break it into 40 times 10, we know that the 10 is the 10 statements of creation, the 10 words on Mount Sinai, 10 men in a minyan, and the 40 would be testing and trial. So we have the tree of sacrifice, then you have the letter Vav, and that's a peg, it means add, secure, or hook. And the number 6 represents man. And so you have a man that's going to be secured to the tree of sacrifice, right? The next pictogram we have is the shepherd's staff that represents the shepherd, teach, yoke, or toward, the number 30. And the number 30 was the age that a priest had to be to enter into the ministry. Okay, Yeshua was about 30 years old, it says in the Brit Hadashah, when he began his ministry. And in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, it says what? That Yeshua is the good shepherd, right? And so we have the good shepherd as the one that was nailed to the tree of sacrifice. Okay, teach, yoke, toward, right? He said what? My yoke is easy and my burden is light, and he was to what? To bring the people to the Lord, right? And he came as what? A teacher, right? He came to teach Torah to the people that were there, right? To correct them, right?
Yeah.
Then we have the letter Dalet, the number 4, which is authority, government, fullness, creation. And the letter Dalet is the door, and it means movement, hang or enter. And what did Yeshua say? I am the door, right? It's one of the 7 I ams. I am the door. Okay, the second vav in the word Toldot does not appear in the Torah scroll, and in the Chumash it'll just appear as a dot. And basically what this shows us is that the shepherd who was nailed to the tree is resurrected. He's not on the tree anymore, okay, because the next one is the tree of sacrifice again. And so if you look at the word Toldot, it'll show you the shepherd on the tree. He goes through the door, and then he's not on the tree anymore. He's resurrected, right? He ascends into heaven from the Mount of Olives 40 days after he's resurrected, right? So you have one, okay, we have the gematria is 846, which is the Hebrew word, what? Romam, which ends up to 846. And it means praise and exaltation. And the digits add up to 18, which would be what? God's new beginning. And 18 is the gematria for the word chai, which means life. Right? So you have the one is unity beginning. God is one, that's the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4. Authority and government, 6 is man or finished work, 8 is a new beginning. And so we have the picture of Yeshua on the tree and then not on the tree, right in the pictograms, and that he's the shepherd and he's the door and he was nailed to the tree of sacrifice for us. And it's all right in the title of the Torah portion. Like it says here, it's all about Yeshua. And so now we'll get into this Torah portion. And this Torah portion will be about Isaac and Rebekah and Abraham and Jacob and Esau and some of the things that go on here. In the last Torah portion, we talked about how Eliezer, right, went to go find a wife for Isaac. Right, we talked about how Abraham represented the father. Isaac represented the son. Eliezer represented the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And Rebekah represents the bride of Messiah, which would be the believers in Yeshua, right? And so we'll have Debbie start out. We're in Genesis chapter 25. And go ahead and read verse 19 through 23.
And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated Hashem for his wife because she was barren. And Hashem was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together with her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? She went to inquire of Hashem. And Hashem said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 manners of people shall be separated from your bowels. The one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger.
And the elder shall serve the younger. Okay, so we start out, okay, what? And these are the offspring of Isaac, son of Abraham, right? Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old. Now remember, in the last Torah portion, when Abraham took Isaac, he was to sacrifice him on Mount Moriah, and the Lord gave Isaac back to Abraham. They took the ram from the bushes, right, and sacrificed the ram. And at that time, Isaac was 37 years old. And at the time Rebekah comes, Isaac is about 40 years old. Okay. And Rebekah, they say, has no children for a long period of time. She's barren for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow,
Okay.
that's a long time. After
20
all, you were
years.
just about to say yes.
And they say what happened was that Isaac took Rebekah to Mount Moriah, and they both prayed on Mount Moriah and asked the Lord to intercede that Rebekah would be able to have children.
Did he have another wife?
No, that was it.
No.
Mixed up.
Those 2
Got
were.
'em all mixed up.
And so
It was
So
just those
what
2.
happens is, Isaac, when he's 40 years old, he takes Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, from Padan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean, as a wife to himself. And we talked about that
Just
last
2 of
week.
those 2.
It says here in verse 21, Isaac entreated Hashem opposite his wife because she was barren. And this they did according to the Midrashes. They
Maybe.
prayed on Mount Moriah. And the Lord allowed himself to be entreated by him. So the Lord heard the prayers of Isaac, and Rebekah conceived. And it says here that there were what? The children fought within her.
Oh, come on. Boom.
And so she went to inquire of the Lord. And in the Midrash, it tells us that to inquire of the Lord, in the Midrash it tells us that she went to the school of Shem and Eber to ask them what was going on, because they had the Beit Midrash, they had the school of study, and so she went there to ask them what was going on. And in the Midrash, it says that the Lord answered them, and she was given this message from the Lord: 2 nations are in your womb, 2 regimes from your inside shall be separated, and the might shall pass from one regime to the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. And according to this prophecy, okay, here, whenever one of them is in power, the other one is down, and whenever the other one comes to power, the other one is down. They're never both in power at the same time.
No.
So when one rises up, the other one goes down. When the other one rises up, the other one goes down. Okay? And it's like a battle inside her womb. And it says that the elder will serve the younger. And like I said, in the Midrash she goes and she asks Shem and Eber, they ask the Lord what's going on, and there's going to be 2 nations. Okay? And there's a study that Rabbi Jeremy Storch did on the war between the seeds, and he talks some about Esau and Jacob and Isaac in that study, which would be a good thing to take a look at. So she finds out that there's 2 nations and they're battling inside her womb. And according to the Midrashes, they say that because of this struggle and because of all of this pain, she complained to the Lord about it. And in the Midrash it says that actually, in the Midrash it says that she was to be the one to bear the 12 tribes of Israel, but because she complained to the Lord because of the pain, that she had no more children after this, and that it passed down to the next generation, and the wives of Jacob had the 12 tribes. But that's not what the Torah, okay, that's just, the Midrash says that. Okay, and in the Torah, Jacob's wives, of course, in the Torah, Jacob's wives have the 12 sons for the 12 tribes. And also here,
Yeah, but this wasn't your normal struggle in her
no,
womb.
No.
that was like World War III.
Yeah,
in
this
her
I
womb.
know.
is
And
Fair enough.
basically,
Just normal
they
thinking.
say that the battle inside Rebecca's womb was so horrendous that basically
Probably
her
got black and blue
womb,
in there.
when
probably
the
She
two,
probably couldn't have any more.
when the 2 children were born, that because of the battle in her womb was about totally destroyed.
Yeah, that's what
And
I
she
said.
couldn't have any more children.
That's the way I would look at it, rather
Yeah.
than that.
Pretty-
Said she had heavy bleeding, all kinds of
Oh,
internal
yes.
damage.
Wow. Some of them do get pretty active, but not that active.
Not that bad.
No,
I
but
mean,
this was really bad. And so we'll find out who they are in a little bit now. So there's a battle, there's a warfare going on.
Probably a spiritual thing.
It's a
Yeah.
spiritual
to this
battle
minute,
that's going on. And it's basically, like I said, part of the war between the seeds that they talk about. So Angela, could you go ahead and read verse 24 through 28?
When her term to bear grew full, then behold, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, entirely like a hairy mantle. So they named him Esau. After that, his brother emerged with his hand grasping onto the heel of Esau. So he called his name Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. The lads grew up, and Esau became one who knows trapping, a man of the field. But Jacob was a wholesome man, abiding in tents. Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Okay, and there's a lot in here. Okay, so now when Rebecca's about to have the children, she has, well, now we find out why there was a battle going on. There were twins in there, right?
Tommy,
Okay,
how old was she when she had them?
Oh.
She's
We
60
know.
or
that's,
somewhere there, nobody knows?
that's under debate,
Okay,
but-
what's the
but
guess?
the guesstimate is on some of the different midrashes that Rebecca was about 14
14.
when
She got married.
when she marries,
Yeah, they married.
when, okay, in
So
other
she's on the
words,
far end of
in
trouble.
other words, when
Getting married far.
Eliezer gets Rebecca from Bethuel and Padanaram and brings Rebecca back to Isaac, okay? At that time, Rebecca is about 14 years old, and at that time, Isaac would have been about 40, and now it's 20 years later. So we know that Isaac is 60. The age of Rebecca is
Middle third.
debatable, but if you use the age of 14 and add 22, that would mean that Isaac was 60 and Rebecca would have been in her mid-30s.
But we have no idea.
But we don't really know for sure.
Right.
How do you pronounce Rebecca in Hebrew?
Rivka.
Rivka, yeah. I was
Okay.
wondering what they were saying over there.
Yeah, Rivka. Rivka is the Hebrew name.
You say you have your children by age 30.
Rivka.
Right.
After
And
that,
so it
it's hard
says
to
the
do.
first one emerged red, entirely like a hairy mantle, so his name was Esau.
Some of them are
And of
real
course,
ordinary.
The country named after him is called Edom, which means red.
Yeah,
And he had hair all over him.
Some babies
And,
do.
and Esau actually means maker, that when he was born, he was fully made, that he had hair all over his body, his hair was grown, he had all his teeth, and all of these other things, like a little grown-up almost. Okay? And his brother emerged with his hand grasping on the heel of Esau, so he called his name Yaakov. Okay, and it says here, Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When he married Rebecca, he was 40, right?
wow, yeah.
Okay, so 20 years have gone by. And what happens is when Jacob, a lot of times is translated as supplanter or deceiver,
He'll
but the word Yaakov actually means hand on the heel. And they say that what Jacob was trying to do, he grabbed Esau's heel so that Esau couldn't stomp on him or stomp on his head while he was in
Yeah, kick him in the
while he
ass.
was in Rebecca's womb. And so basically he was holding Esau's heel
Just
for
saving
defensive
himself.
purposes. He was
Wow.
defending his life,
Yeah.
basically in the
Oh,
womb,
my goodness.
Ugh.
okay?
Well,
That's-
Adam means red too, doesn't it?
So there was an actual warfare going on in Rebecca's womb, and they tie that back to the book of Genesis, chapter 3. And when you go back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, I believe it is.
He may not have wanted that.
It says this. Okay, well, we'll start at Genesis 3:14. And the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Okay, you see that? And so here what they say in Rebecca's womb was that the adversary was trying to reverse the curse that God had put on him. Because, what does it say? It says that the godly are supposed to bruise the head of Satan the serpent, and that the serpent would bruise his heel, right? So the serpent would bruise the heel of the godly, but the godly would what? Bruise the serpent on the head. And in the womb, in Rebekah's womb, Esau, being controlled, was trying to reverse this curse. In other words, by stomping Jacob, but Jacob grabbed him by the heel and prevented that. So that's where it starts, that's where it originates at, Genesis 3:15. And so this is when Isaac was 60 years old. And remember, Isaac was born when Abraham was 100. So at this point, Abraham is 160 years old.
Wow.
Okay? Abraham is still alive when Esau and Jacob were born.
I heard somewhere he's only like 130 something, 35 something like that.
160.
Wow.
Okay? So you have already, there's a battle in the womb going on between Esau and Jacob. Okay, it's Elmer's turn to read now. Go ahead and read verse 27 through 30. Genesis 25, 27 to 30.
And the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. And Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau, because he ate of his venison. And Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob boiled stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray you, with that same red stew, for I am faint." Therefore was his name called Edom.
Edom, right. Okay, now what happens here, okay, it says that the lads grew up, and Esau was what? One who knew trapping, a man of the field. He was a mighty hunter. And as a matter of fact, he goes out in the field one day, according to the Midrash, he's out hunting, and he runs across Nimrod, and he kills Nimrod and Nimrod's son.
Oh my goodness.
Okay? And he gets back, there's a garment that talks about the garment from the Garden of Eden that Adam had that was passed down through the generations according to the Midrash.
Yeah.
And so Esau gets the garment from Nimrod after he kills Nimrod and his son. So Esau becomes the mighty hunter. Jacob says abides in the tents. Okay, Jacob is a righteous man, and he studies Torah. He studies Torah with his father Isaac. He goes to the Beit Midrash, according to the Midrashes, and studies with Shem and Eber all about the Lord. But Esau is a man of the field, so Esau is basically all caught up in the things of the world.
More worldly man, yeah.
Okay, so Esau is a worldly man, and Jacob is a spiritual man, and he's deeply involved with the things of the spirit. Okay, so Jacob is looking at the things of the spirit, and Esau is looking at the things of the world. Okay, and of course, when Rebekah finds out about the problem with the twins, Esau and Jacob, she's told by the Lord, according to the Midrash, that she's not allowed to reveal any of the prophecy to anybody that's been given to her. So she has to keep it quiet about what the future holds for Esau and Jacob. So it says that Isaac loved Esau because of the game, but Rebekah loved Jacob because Jacob was a man of the spirit. And if you remember, according to the last Torah portion, after Sarah died, there were certain blessings that were lost, and when Rebekah was brought in, all of the blessings returned. And the Shekinah, the glory of God, abode over her tent. And so Rebekah was a godly woman. And so Rebekah, being a woman of the spirit, okay, loved Jacob, who was a man of the spirit. That's her son Jacob, okay? And it says here that Jacob was simmering the stew, and Esau came in from the field. And they say actually at this point what had happened was the family was in mourning. Abraham had just passed away. At this point, Abraham was 175 years old. And the two boys, Esau and Jacob, were 15. And in the Midrash, it tells us that until about age 13, Jacob and Esau studied Torah, and they grew up together, but that Esau really wasn't concerned with the spiritual things. And that he would go in and talk to his father Isaac and ask his father Isaac questions about the Torah just to try and look good and make his father think that he was involved in the things of the Lord, but it was all a sham. It was just for show.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, doesn't it?
And so once they turned 13, it said, they started to drift apart. Esau became a man of the field. Jacob was a righteous man that studied the word. And so Jacob was simmering stew, and they say that it was a mourner's stew because Abraham had just died. And Esau was going on about his business. Everybody else was in mourning. And Esau was just going out on about his business out in the field hunting and whatnot, and couldn't care less about what was happening. Oh, somebody died, okay. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, if it's your own father.
And so Esau comes in,
Funeral, so.
Esau's grandfather, okay, Abraham's grandfather, says, pour into me now some of that very red stuff, for I am exhausted, and his name was called Edom. So he comes in, and what is Jacob doing? The responsibility of the firstborn is to take care of the family, right? And like I said, at this time, Jacob and Esau are about 15 years old, they say. And so Jacob is doing all of the duties that a firstborn son would normally be doing, while Esau is out there running around out in the field. Jacob is taking care of all of the stuff at home that the firstborn son should have been taken care of, and he wasn't.
Right.
Okay? And so he says what? Esau says, I'm exhausted from hunting. I need something to eat. And Jacob says, sell this day your birthright to me. Okay, so Jacob is not a deceiver. Okay, he's not a conniver. Right here in verse 32, Genesis chapter 25, he says what? Verse 31, Jacob said, sell this day your birthright to me. And in verse 32, Esau said, look, I am going to die, so of what use to me is a birthright? And so in verse 32, Esau said, look, I've been out in the field, I've been hunting, I'm tired, I'm hungry. If I don't eat something, I'm going to die. What use is a birthright? And so in verse 32, Esau despises his birthright. Okay? He despises his birthright. He goes, what, against everything that a firstborn son is supposed to be responsible for, right? He hasn't fulfilled any of his responsibilities as a
Just
firstborn
didn't want to
son.
be responsible, I guess.
He doesn't want to be responsible. And then he despises his birthright. He says, what use is a birthright to me?
He's thinking more of the moment, you know.
And so he didn't care anything about the spiritual things and the blessings that were involved and the blessings that were going to be passed down. He didn't think anything of the life of the world to come, Olam Haba. All he thought about was right here and right now. What's happening right now? This is all I'm concerned about. If you want to worry about Olam Haba and the world to come, you go ahead and worry about it, because I want it right now and right here, and when I'm dead, it's over.
Yeah.
That's basically Esau's opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Right? Get all the toys you can, right? Before you die, right? But you can't,
All the gusto you can.
but what does it say? It says you can't take any of it with you, can you?
Nope,
No.
good
It
thing.
says what? The scripture says, store up what? Treasures in heaven,
Yeah.
where moth and rust doesn't corrupt and thieves can't break through and steal, right?
Yeah.
Put your treasures in heaven.
Yeah. You know, I think the treasures are, hit me here a while back, was all the good you do with your life and what you
Amen.
do,
Right,
It's our
do
good
with your
deeds.
life to further the kingdom.
right,
And you'll be
Kindness.
rewarded.
right,
The
later
Bible
on,
says you'll
right.
receive rewards for that.
But Esau didn't care any about that.
Oh, no, no. He's-
Like he says here, verse 32, what use to me is a birthright? He had an inheritance as the firstborn son from Abraham, right?
Yeah,
And he's gonna give it all away.
yeah, evidently didn't care much about it. He
No.
sold it.
No, so Jacob is not a deceiver or a conniver. He right out tells him, sell this day your birthright to me. And Esau says, okay.
He agreed.
In verse 33 and 34, Jacob said, swear to me this day. He swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank, and got up and left. Thus Esau spurned his birthright. In other words, the things of the spirit, the things of heaven, that doesn't mean nothing to me. The only thing that counts is what's happening here right now. In the Midrash, what it tells us is that Jacob actually pays Esau for the birthright. Gives Esau gold for the birthright.
Mm,
The Torah doesn't tell us that, though.
yeah.
That's in a midrash. And so all we have in the Torah is that Jacob fed him stew for the birthright. So apparently Esau didn't feel that the birthright was worth very much, right?
Probably like Cain and Abel. You just knock him in the head and take it. You know.
Just go ahead and take it.
Yeah, he'd take it. When the time comes, he'd probably just kill him and figure he can kill him and take his birthright.
And so
If he wanted it, I don't know. Just guesswork.
So this is where we have the separation now between Esau and Jacob. Esau is a man of the world, Jacob is a man of the spirit. And what happens is, if you're a man of the spirit,
Hashem is on your side.
what'll happen is, if you're righteous and you're doing the things of the Lord, He'll give you the material things here that you need to
Right.
keep going.
That's right. You'll be blessed.
Okay, so now what happens? Well, now there's going to be a famine. And so Debbie, Genesis chapter 26, go ahead and read verse 1 through 7. And here, Isaac is going to try and copy what his father Abraham did.
And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Hashem appeared to him and said, Don't go down to Egypt, dwell in the land that I tell you of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For unto you and unto your seed I will give all these countries. And I will perform the oath that I swear to Abraham your father. And I will make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give to your seed all these countries. And in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She's my sister. But he feared to say, She's my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon.
Okay.
Calvin for his wife.
Right. So now, okay, just like a couple Torah portions ago, right, when there was a famine, what Abraham went down to Egypt, right, and you had the Pharaoh, and he told Sarah, tell the men that you're my sister, right? And we're having the same situation now.
All over
He
there.
goes, Abimelech is just the title,
Back to sister.
okay? Abimelech is just the title. It means my father, the king of the Philistines. Okay, so Isaac goes to Gerar, and the Lord tells Isaac, don't go to Egypt, dwell in the land that I show you. Sojourn in the land, I will be with you and bless you. And your offspring will I give all these lands and establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens, and will give your offspring all these lands. All the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by what? Your offspring. And that's what the people of Israel are doing today, right? They win more Nobel Prizes per capita than any other, and they're doing things to help people all over the world. Okay, because Abraham obeyed my voice and observed what? My safeguards, commandments, decrees, and my Torahs. And so we'll find out what those things are, right? And so the safeguards are charges, which were barriers, okay, so that people wouldn't infringe biblical prohibitions, okay? So in other words, here we're talking about fences, right? Putting a safeguard around the things of the word so that people don't violate what the commandments are. Yeah, like what the words are. The commandments are laws. Commandments are laws that man's moral sense would dictate. Okay, so in other words, there are laws that you have to be able to have a viable society and not have total chaos, right?
Yep.
Okay, my decrees, okay, statutes that the Lord made, okay, those are laws that we can't explain, that we don't have a reason. God just said, this is the way it is, this is how you do it, and so that's what we do, right?
His
Just
ways are not
like-
our ways.
Well, it's just like when you have, okay, if you have a family and you have children, and they come and ask you something and you say no, and they say why, and you just say, because I said so, right?
There you go.
I don't have to have a reason, right?
That's right.
Test me.
I'm in charge, right?
That's right.
Sometimes I like
said so.
And then you have my Torahs that are laws or teachings that are from the written Torah and also from the oral Torah. Okay, there's a lot of things in the Torah where there's not enough information in the Torah to be able to fulfill the mitzvah or whatever the commandment is. And so there is an oral Torah that's been written down that explains how to perform many of the different mitzvot in the Torah. Okay? So the oral Torah is important. And after the
Hey, this girl.
after the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 AD and the Jewish people started to be scattered,
Didn't go anywhere.
if you remember, they went to Alexandria, Egypt, and then later on they codified everything. And they wrote the Mishnah and the Mishnah and the Gemara, and that's combined, it's called the Talmud, to explain all the different rules and regulations that were originally oral. Because they were afraid after everybody was scattered, they would lose some of the information, so they had to write it all down.
Yeah, they did sometimes about lose it when they come back from Babylon and started to build a temple. The priest was kind of worried because they had no
Yeah.
Torah scroll.
Yeah,
And then I think Samuel.
so they had to find everything
Samuel
and start
come up
over.
with one, he
Yeah.
must know where one was
Yeah.
hidden or something.
Yep, and so now, in the land, there's a famine, just like there was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac goes to Gerar, where the Philistines are. And what does he do? He goes to Rebekah, and he tells her, tell these men that you're my sister. So he's copying the same plan that Abraham, his father, used when they went down
Self-preservation.
to Egypt.
That's all we knew.
Yeah,
Abraham and Sarah were half siblings. These two were not siblings at all, right?
well,
Yeah.
there's a
There's a connection,
connection.
but it's not half sibling.
They're-
It's
they're
not
not.
that.
What it is
Maybe
Sarah,
cousin once removed. Or,
okay, Nahor was related
I
to,
know,
to Terah and Abraham.
uncle or something somewhere.
And they're family, but they're
Right.
not direct,
They're not that close.
not that close. Sarah was Laban's sister.
Yeah, they didn't want to intermarry with them pagan
The cousins
Canaanites and Philistines.
So what happens here
Well, inbreeding.
You'd make them cousins.
is that Isaac settles in Gerar, and the men of the place ask about his wife, and he says, she is my sister. And he tells Rebekah, if they ask you, say the same thing, otherwise they might kill me. So he's trying to use the same method Abraham used. And let's see what happens because of that. Okay, Angela, go ahead and read verse 8 through
Yeah, this is
14.
really-
And it came to pass, as his days were lengthened, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, gazed down through the window and saw, behold, Isaac was jesting with his wife Rebekah. Abimelech summoned Isaac and said, But look, she is your wife. How could you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, because I said that I would be killed because of her. Abimelech said, what is that you have done to us? One of the people has nearly lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. Abimelech then warned all the people, saying, whoever molests this man or his wife shall surely be put to death.
Shall surely be put to, okay. So now what we see here
They knew
is,
how to handle things in those days.
is that Abimelech, remember Abraham was involved with an Abimelech? Yep.
Is that who gave him the slave?
Well, originally, you remember, Abraham goes down to Egypt, and first he has the problem with Pharaoh. Then when he comes back up, he ends up in that land, and Abimelech, and he says that Sarah's his sister again.
That's amazing.
And I guess the message got passed down. And now I don't think it's the same Abimelech that Abraham and Sarah were with originally, but it may be a son or a grandson, or what had happened in the past generation was written down in the history. And they were warned, if a man comes down here and tells you that the lady that's with him is his sister, be careful. Because the last time that happened, we went through all kinds of plagues and grief. So watch
They didn't
out.
learn from last time, yeah.
Abimelech, that Abraham was involved with, is he the one that gave him that slave?
No,
He had that slave, good slave for
No.
the wrong.
no,
What was- so somebody came-
actually, they say in the Midrash that there was a servant given to Abraham, who later on we find out is Eliezer. And the servant Eliezer that was given to Abraham, according to the Midrash, was actually given to him by Nimrod
Oh, yeah.
when he left. Remember, Nimrod tried to have Abraham killed and he couldn't do it, and Abraham
Yeah.
left.
And he was wanting him to, this servant to kind of spy, let him know what was going on with
Yeah.
Abraham, right?
Yeah, and it didn't work out
No,
because Eliezer became a
because he
follower of the one true God,
He became totally,
most trusted servant, yep.
right, to
Yeah.
Abraham.
So, now, we just read, right? Angela just read. And Abimelech, because of the records of the past, was probably watching Isaac and Rebekah real close. And here, in verse 8, he finally caught them. And in
What's it
verse
called?
9, he summons Isaac and says, aha, I knew it, she's your wife, not your sister. You could have gotten me into all kinds of trouble. But what I had these records from the past, so I knew I had to be careful, right?
Yeah,
Either that or we feared God, we
Yeah.
didn't want to get in trouble.
So
with that.
Isaac said to him, because I said that I would be killed because of her, because Rebekah was just as beautiful as Sarah was. Okay, the Shekinah dwelled over Sarah's tent. When Sarah died, the Shekinah left. And when Rebekah went into the tent, the Shekinah came back, right? The glory of God, the candles stayed lit, the dough was blessed, everything was,
I noticed a lot of them prominent Hebrew men liked the good-looking girls. They liked
So-
those beautiful women, they had hundreds of them.
so what does Abimelech do? He puts out
Decree.
a decree all over the land, right? He
No,
sends
touch
out
either
a
one of them,
decree.
not either one
He
of them.
sends out a decree. Whoever molests this man or his wife shall be put to death.
He's protecting the two of them.
And he can't rescind that.
Because what he was doing, what Abimelech was doing is protecting himself, because if anybody molested Isaac or Rebekah,
God
they
would
would
get on
suffer,
their case.
his nation would suffer the consequences
Right.
for it. All the judgments from God.
Yeah.
In other words, if anybody bothered Isaac or Rebekah, his land would be cursed.
Later on, down the road, it did cause a lot.
So they would have all kinds of plagues.
Yeah, yeah.
So Isaac stays in the land, and basically Abimelech has put out a decree that Isaac and Rebekah are protected. They're under my protection. If anybody touches either one of them, it's the death penalty.
Wow. I wonder how they didn't have electronics in those days. How did
They write the decree and they have a messenger go out all through the country
I thought maybe he sent somebody
And make-
with them too.
and they make the decree. So now, I'll have Elmer go ahead and read verse 12 through 18.
Okay. Let's see, I'm in the right place. 27?
26, chapter 26,
Okay.
verse 12 through 18.
And Isaac sowed in that land and found in the same year 100-fold, and Hashem blessed him. And the man became great and grew more and more until he became very great. And he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great household. And the Philistines envied him. Now all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, the Philistines had stopped and filled with it, and filled the earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for you are much mightier than we. And Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there.
Okay, another verse.
And Isaac dug again the wells of water, which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them, and after the death of Abraham. And he called their names after the names by which his father had called them.
Okay, so now remember, he goes to the land of Gerar because of what? A famine, right? And in Gerar, verse 12 says that he reaped 100-fold.
And there's a famine? It's amazing. Of course, he's opening up the wells.
Because why? Because there's a righteous man in the land, so the land is blessed by the Lord, right? Wherever a righteous man is, the land is blessed. Okay? And so Isaac reaps 100-fold, and it says what, he became great and kept becoming greater and greater until he was very great. And they say in the Midrash actually that by this point that he had even more wealth than the king did.
Wow. How long?
In other words, it doesn't say how long a time period it was, but that Isaac was actually wealthier and more powerful than the king of the land that he was living in.
Wow.
And so Abimelech
I haven't been righteous enough.
And so Abimelech said, what, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we are. He was afraid that Isaac would take over the country.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be.
But Isaac is
I wonder
what?
what's going on.
Isaac is a righteous man, a man of the Spirit, a man of peace. And so he departed from there and camped in the valley and dwelled there. And what happened was Abraham had dug a bunch of wells when he was there previously. Okay, and the Philistines had stopped up all those wells. And so Isaac dug anew the wells of water that Abraham had originally dug when Abraham had dwelled there,
Probably a little easier to dig, and I've dug
right? Well, they knew where the
holes
water
I've
was.
dug before.
They
Yeah.
knew where the wells were located, so they could go back and dig them back up.
Yeah, that's true too. They might have hit a few dry holes, Abraham trying to find
Yeah.
that good well.
And so he called these wells by the same names that Abraham called the wells. And the name of each well, each one of them means something different, and we'll get to that in a minute. And so they're going to dig these wells. Okay, Debbie, go ahead and read verse 19 through 25.
And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water's ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And he digged another well, and strove for that also. He called the name of it Sitnah. And he removed from thence, and digged another well. And for that they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth, for he said, for now Hashem has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And he went up from there to Beersheba. And Hashem appeared to him in the same night, saying, I am the God of Abraham, your father. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and will multiply your seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of Hashem, and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged the well.
Okay,
Well digging.
yep, so they're well digging. Okay, so
Gotta have water.
So Isaac's servants, right, they go and they dig and they find a well. And the herdsmen of Gerar come along and quarrel with Isaac's herdsmen. And they say, well, the water is ours. And what does Isaac do? Does he fight about it? Does he
Nope.
complain about it?
Took off and dug another.
No. Says Isaac's servants dug the well in the valley, they found fresh water. And the men of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying the water is ours. So he called the name of that well Esek, because they involved themselves with him. Okay, so basically, you remember when Abraham and Lot dwelled together, and the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abraham, and what did Abraham do? Time to split up, right?
Yeah.
Pick whatever land you want, you go your way, I'll go mine, whichever way you want to go, you go ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so Isaac, again, wants to be a man of peace, right? He doesn't want to get into a big quarrel and an argument, any kind of a battle.
Seed
Okay.
for
I just dug this well, but you want to say it's yours, fine, okay, you can have it.
Find another.
We'll go get another
Dig
one.
another.
They're probably trying to
And
do
so,
something.
the servants of Isaac go out again, and they dig another well. And the men of Gerar quarreled in that one also, and they called the name of that well Sitnah. Okay. And so the first well is
Means what?
named Esek, which means contention, and is related to the strife of the nations that caused the destruction of the first temple. The second well was called Sitnah, which means hindrance or enmity, because they fought with Isaac's servants again. And they say this refers to the second temple period, when Israel's enemies were more violent. The third well was called Rehoboth, and Rehoboth means spaciousness. And is related to the future temple period when strife and fighting and bickering and arguing will become a thing of the past.
There'll be
Of
plenty of
course,
room.
that'll be during the Messianic era, okay, what we call the millennium,
Yeah.
when we have the millennial temple,
Right.
okay? The third temple that they're getting ready to build now, unfortunately,
It'll probably
is going to be desecrated by the Antichrist, and it's gonna be a time of strife.
It'll probably be destroyed by fire like the rest
But-
of the earth, right? There'll be nothing
But-
left to remind us of what
right.
went on before.
But Rehoboth, like I said, means spaciousness, and here Isaac finds a place to dwell, okay? So they dig the third one and there's no quarrel. And after that, the Lord appears to him again and assures Isaac of
And
the
he says,
covenant
"Don't worry."
that he gave to Abraham. And he says in verse 24, "Fear not, for I am with you. I will bless you and increase your offspring because of Abraham my servant." And what does Isaac do? Isaac builds an altar there and calls on Hashem by name, and he pitches his tents there, and Isaac's servants dig a well.
So do that.
So they dig another well.
Dig we must.
And now Abimelech is getting really worried and really frightened. He's scared because Isaac has prospered. He's super wealthy, even wealthier than the king. He has more possessions than the king of Gerar.
Mm.
He has more power and more authority basically than the king does. And the king is afraid now
Mhm.
that Isaac is going to take over his country.
Yeah, they're always doing that. That's what happens when they up in that position, you know. Somebody's always trying to
You
take
get
away.
threatened.
Right.
Yeah.
But Isaac doesn't look at it that way.
Mm.
Isaac isn't interested,
He looks at it as a blessing from.
right, Isaac isn't interested in those things. So what happens now, Angela, go ahead and read verse 26 through verse 33.
Abimelech went to him from Gerar with a group of his friends and Phicol,
Phicol,
general of his legion. Isaac said to him, "Why have you come to me? You hate me and drove me away from you." And they said, "We have indeed seen that Hashem has been with you." So we said, "Let the oath between ourselves now be between us and you, and let us make a covenant with you. If you do evil with us, just as we have not molested you, and just as we have done with you only good, and sent you away in peace, now you, O blessed of Hashem." He made them a feast, and they ate and drank. They awoke early in the morning and swore to one another. Then Isaac saw them off, and they departed from him in peace. And it was on that very day that Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. And they said to him, "We have found water." And he named it Sheba. Therefore the name of this city is Beersheba until this very day.
Until this very day. Okay, so what he does here is Abimelech comes with a group of his friends and Phicol, the general of his legion, right, that's what it says
Here's
here.
Isaac all by himself on the other side.
In verse 26, right, so it's like he's coming with, Abimelech is coming with his entourage, right? All of these people
Yeah.
to try and impress Isaac, right? And I don't think Isaac is too impressed, right?
No.
I think he's trying to kind of give Isaac a little bit of a show of force here, coming with
I
this
got all these
general,
people with
and
me
all
and
of
you're
these
all by
people,
yourself.
Intimidating.
yeah, kind of try and
Yeah.
intimidate them to try and get this treaty because they're afraid that Isaac will just wipe them out.
Yeah, yeah.
The God of bicycle.
Yeah. And so they tell him, what, indeed we have seen that Hashem has been with you. So he said, let the oath between ourselves now be between us and you, and let us make a covenant with you. Right, so now they're coming to Isaac to make a covenant with Isaac so that Isaac won't go to war with them. Now, like we've said all through here, Isaac has been a man of peace. When they were arguing over the wells, what? Isaac took all his men and just went and dug another one, right? Isaac is a man of peace. He doesn't want anything to do with war.
That's a good idea.
So if you do evil with us, okay, and then he goes, just as we have not molested you, that's what Abimelech is saying, just as we have not molested you. What do you mean you didn't molest me? What about that well we just dug that you said was yours?
Yeah.
What about the next one that we dug that you said was yours? Like, can I really believe what you're gonna tell me right now, Abimelech? Well, Abimelech did put out a decree to protect them, right? Him and Rebecca, right? But still, says, and just as we have done with you only good, we sent you away in peace. You are blessed of Hashem. And so they sucker Isaac into making a covenant with them. It doesn't say anywhere here where Isaac prayed or asked the Lord if he was supposed to make a covenant with Abimelech.
Hubby,
Yeah,
God came ahead of it and said, I'll bless you, I'll take care of you.
Right.
Don't worry.
right.
And I hear that. Don't worry.
That's
He
probably
came
one of the-
ahead and said, it'll
one
be
of
all
the
right.
Hidden covenants, because somebody said there's 9 covenants mentioned in the Bible. And
Well,
he
this-
found 8 of them. He's trying to find the 9th.
well, what happens here now
It's in there somewhere.
is they've made a covenant here. He made them a feast and they ate and drank. They awoke early in the morning, swore to one another. Isaac saw them off and departed from him in peace.
That's it.
And that very day, Isaac's servants came back. They found water, another well that they call Sheba. And that city today is named Beersheba, which commemorates both of the occurrences, the well and the oath. Okay, Sheba means 7. Okay, and the other oath to commemorate. Okay, what happens is that 7 ewes that Abraham had given to Abimelech in addition to the oath that was made in Genesis 21, verse 28 to 31. Okay,
Probably a big flock of sheep after all that time.
yep, okay. So, then in verse 34, because Isaac married Rebekah when he was 40, guess what Esau does? I'm gonna be like my brother Isaac. And so when Esau is 40 years old, he takes a wife, Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite,
Oh, yeah.
and Basemeth, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And verse 35 says, both of them, and they were a source of spiritual rebellion to Isaac and Rebekah.
Grief of mind.
Read your mind, yeah.
Grief of
Children do
mind.
the wrong
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so basically Esau marries Hittite women and they're all idol worshipers.
And 2 of them, not just
They
one.
weren't supposed to do that.
That's
If
what
they-
they would.
Now, if they would convert,
Right. but
to
they're
their
not,
religion,
they don't.
but they continue. That's
Because
that's a
Esau,
no-no, actually.
Esau is a man of the world. He thinks
Yeah,
nothing of the things of the spirit.
Right, he didn't-
And if he marries a woman that worships an idol, so what? As far as he's concerned,
very
what
liberal-
difference
liberal
does it make?
Yes, yeah. Hittites were pretty interesting people. They were pretty intelligent and good warriors and all kinds of stuff.
Well, what happens here is this.
They were pure communists, though, believe it or not. The Hittites lived in a communist type society.
Doesn't sound that way to me.
Okay, but where do you think all of Israel's problems come from? Okay,
Some group of
you
people that
remember
neighbors.
Abraham had a son, right? What was his name? Hagar's son?
Ishmael.
Ishmael, right? And that's where the Ishmaelites come from. And from Ishmael comes what? The Amalekites. Okay, and the Amalekites, okay, who's descended from the Amalekites? Haman. Boo!
Oh, my goodness, yeah, he didn't have it.
Okay, descended from Esau, okay, Edom,
The Edomites.
or the Edomites,
Yeah.
okay? And according to the histories, says that the Edomites later on become the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And the Roman Empire destroys the Second Temple,
I thought Hashem told
Later
him to
on-
destroy the Edomites.
okay? And
The
later on,
Amalekites is who they were supposed to do.
and later on what
They didn't
happens,
do it.
they say, well, archaeology and historians and stuff say that there may also be a connection between Esau and Germany.
Makes sense.
So that's what happens,
For Hitler,
huh?
for Hitler.
Yep. And so you have all of this because of Ishmael and Esau
Yeah.
and the women that they married.
Hitler wasn't born in Germany, though. I think he was born in,
So Esau marries Beeri, okay, Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were both sources of spiritual rebellion. And in the scripture, rebellion is compared to what?
witchcraft.
Witchcraft. And this is coming right into Isaac and Rebekah's household through Esau.
Well, he was told he would be a great nation, but Jacob, would take the lead, but then when they were blessed, but he would still be a great nation,
Mhm.
Esau. But I thought those Edomites were destroyed. Seemed like I read that somewhere.
But they say in the Midrashes, right, that Esau was a very immoral person,
Oh, yeah.
okay? He was
World, yeah.
terrible, they say. So now we go to chapter 27. And now we're gonna come to where we have to have the blessing. Isaac is getting older now. And so, who are we up to? Angel, Debbie? Okay, chapter 27,
I think so.
verse 1 through 10.
Yeah, she. I read
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his oldest son and said to him, My son. He said unto him, Behold, here am I. He said, Behold, now I'm old. I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray you, your weapon, your quiver, and your bow. Go out to the field and take me some venison. Make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. Isaac went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. Rebekah said to Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, Bring me venison, make me savory meat, that I may eat, and bless you before Hashem before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to all that I command you. Go to the flock, fetch me from there 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father that he may eat, and that he may bless you before his death.
Okay. Now,
He named his
remember,
favorite food.
Rebecca was told what? Rebecca was told by the Lord that the elder would serve the younger.
Right.
And Rebecca also knows that Esau sold his birthright
She's gonna make sure
to
this
Jacob. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, and by selling the birthright to Jacob, he gave Jacob the rights of the firstborn son. And the right of the firstborn son was to receive the blessing. And so when Isaac says he's ready to bless Esau, Rebecca says, he sold the birthright to Jacob. Jacob should get the blessing. Jacob is a man of the spirit, Esau is a man of the world. Jacob needs to get the blessing. Esau sold the birthright to him. Esau despised the birthright. He hasn't fulfilled the duties and responsibilities of a firstborn son. So Jacob should get the blessing. And so Rebecca now is going to go and make sure that Jacob gets it and not Esau.
Yeah, because he was gonna go ahead and give Esau.
Because Isaac was going to bless Esau. Why? Because Isaac knew that Esau was the firstborn son.
He was his
But
favorite.
like I said, Esau all through his life was playing the religious game with his father Isaac, making believe that he was studying Torah and doing all of these things when he really wasn't.
Yeah, we don't know what's the heart of a person, you know. Only
Right.
Hashem.
And
knows
so outwardly, he would appear before Isaac as a righteous man, but outside in the world, where Isaac couldn't see him, he was out running around doing whatever he wanted to.
But Isaac said he was his favorite though, right?
Well, Isaac said Esau was his favorite because Esau was the hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. He kind of likes the manly stuff. Works.
So,
Kind of the way to do
so
it.
now Jacob is caught in the middle now because Jacob is a righteous man. Rebecca was told according to the Midrashes, not to tell anybody the prophecy that was given to her when she bore the 2 boys, Jacob and Esau. So she had to keep that to herself. She couldn't tell Isaac what the Lord had told her.
It doesn't indicate that Jacob, that Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob. It says that he loved him because he put game in
On the
his
table,
mouth.
right.
But that can also mean something different as well. You know, it could have been that words were put in his mouth, right?
Yeah, and so we're going to see here now, Jacob tries to get out of this. Okay, now you remember what I said a little while ago, that when one of the times Esau went out hunting, he killed Nimrod and Nimrod's son, and he got the garment that according to the Midrashes was passed down all through history from Adam, from the Garden of Eden. And so Rebecca was given that garment. She put it in, had it in the tent for safekeeping. Okay. And so what happens is now,
Oh, here. I'm sorry. Okay, so that the Hebrew because he loved to eat wild game, or what is it? Put game in his mouth.
Right.
It translates as perhaps entrapment was in his mouth.
Right.
That's how it translates.
Perhaps entrapment, it can be that also, because what they said, in the Midrash, it said that Esau was very smooth with words, and that he could entice people and trap people and get people to say things without realizing it. And in the Midrash, it said what they would do is they would even bring him to the court. And what they would do is when they were trying a person, if they knew the person was guilty and they wouldn't
You
admit
would
it,
get him to admit
they
it.
would bring Esau in, and Esau would ask the person a bunch of questions
And get him to admit to
and
it.
get them to, in a roundabout way, he'd get them to admit that they really did it.
He's a good
Even
detective.
if they didn't.
He's one of the first detectives.
And so,
Yeah.
in other words, what he would do is he would question
That's all.
them and entrap them in the words.
Yeah, that's what they do nowadays.
So he did the same thing to his father.
And that's what he did to his father.
Yeah, so when you read that, you can't think that he loved him more than the other one or anything like that, you know. It's
No.
dangerous to
And
think
so
that.
what happens is,
I'm sure he loves them both.
Yeah.
okay, what he does is this. And this is what Esau did, okay? I'm gonna show you. Esau says, why do I need this birthright? Well, there's a couple of things that Esau did. Okay, and this is Esau the hunter. He was arrogant. Okay, 7 vices which are an abomination to Hashem, and they're listed in Mishlei 5:16, all found in Esau. Arrogance, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked thoughts, feet that run to do evil, a false witness, and sowing discord among brethren.
That's in the New Testament.
Proverbs, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Proverbs.
Esau was,
That's in the, yeah.
what did was,
Proverbs.
well, 7 of them,
I've read that somewhere. I think it's in the New Testament.
okay?
I think it's raining. I think it says here.
Now,
Fire.
some other things that Esau did. Okay, if I can find it here real quick.
Sounds just like your everyday Joe to me.
Huh?
These days.
Yeah, nowadays.
It's all over the internet, of course.
A
Yeah.
lot of people on there.
But like I said, what he would do is he would go to court and he would ask questions. Like Esau would go in, okay, and say the judge would say, did you kill this man? And the defendant would say no. And Esau would be there and he would go, hey, what weapon did you use to do it? And the man would blurt out what weapon he used, and then they'd know that the guy did it. And he would do all kinds of things like that to try and trap the guy and get him, by asking him questions and trap him in his own words.
Yeah,
And this is what Esau would do, according to the Midrashes. So Esau is the man of the world. So now, I guess, Angela, could you go ahead? And like Angela was talking about, Esau would use words to deceive his father Isaac.
Yeah.
So go ahead, read verse 11 through 21.
Yeah.
Jacob replied to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall be as a mocker in his eyes. I will thus bring upon myself a curse rather than a blessing. But his mother said to him, Your curse be on me, my son. Only heed my voice, and go fetch them for me. So he went, fetched, and brought to his mother, and his mother made delicacies as his father loved. Rebekah then took her older son Esau's clean garments, which were with her in the house, and clothed Jacob her young son. With the skins of the goat kids she covered his arms and his smooth-skinned neck. She placed the delicacies and the bread which she had made into the hands of her son Jacob. And he came to his father and said, Father. And he said, Here I am. Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, It is I, Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you have told me. Rise up, please, and sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me.
Okay, so you see here, okay, in verse 15, Rebekah then took her older son Esau's clean garments, which were with her in the house, in the tent. Okay. It says in verse 15, Esau's clean garments, the translation follows the Targum of Onkelos. Okay. Onkelos, as according to history, was one of the Caesar's nephews. Okay. It says, alternatively, these garments that Rebekah got were the precious garments that Esau took from the great hunter Nimrod, according to Rashi.
From the Garden of Eden.
Esau, renowned for his great filial devotion, would wear these precious garments while he served his father. And they had the scent on them of the Garden of Eden. Okay, this is according to the Midrashes. And so what Rebekah does is she gets these garments and puts them on Jacob so that he smells just like the smell of the Garden of Eden. The garment that Esau would normally wear when he came to his father Isaac. And puts the goat skins on him to make Jacob feel like Esau and smell like Esau by wearing the garments that Esau wore before Isaac all the time.
Right.
Okay. And so Jacob says what? He comes to his father and he says, Father, here I am. And what does Isaac say? Who are you, my son? And they say here that Jacob doesn't want to lie because Jacob is a righteous man. And so they say in the Hebrew, according to the Midrashes, the way they say it is that Jacob says, it is I. Esau is your firstborn.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I am Esau.
He's not saying I am
My own
Esau.
words,
He's
yeah.
saying it is I. Esau is your firstborn. It's kind of a playing with the words
Yeah.
there. So he's not going to tell his father an outright lie.
Someone kind of tricks Esau.
Right. Okay. And he goes, I have done as you told me. Rise up, please, sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. Okay, now, Elmer, go ahead and read verse 20 through 29.
And Isaac said unto his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because Hashem, your Elohim, sent me good speed. And Isaac said unto Jacob, come near, I pray you, that I may feel you, my son, whether you be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him, and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy, as his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. And he said, are you my very son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless you, and be brought in near to him. And he ate. And he brought his wine, and he drank. Brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him. And he smelled the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field, which Yahweh has blessed. And Elohim give you of the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and new wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be mighty over you, over your brethren, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone that curses you, and blessed be everyone that blesses you.
Okay. So here he's giving him the same blessing that, okay, Isaac is giving the same blessing to Jacob that the Lord gave to Abraham, right? I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you.
Yeah.
And you, all the nations of the earth, will be blessed, right? And it says here about verse 27, so he drew close and kissed him and smelled the fragrance of his garments. And in the Chumash it says the fragrance of his garments. The pungent smell of washed goatskin is offensive. This teaches that the fragrance of the Garden of Eden entered the room with Jacob, and this was the fragrance that Isaac smelled according to Rashi.
Supernatural.
That's why she put that garment on him.
Right.
That makes
It
sense.
says that when Esau entered with the scent of Gehenna, because he was a man of the world and didn't care about the things of the world to come. And so we have here, Jacob receives the blessing as the firstborn son, receives the inheritance. He was the one that was the righteous one, the one that did the duties of the firstborn son. Okay? And so he receives the blessing. And so we see all through here how the Lord protects
Righteous.
Isaac through all his travels and among all of these different people, and even with his brother Esau. And what happens to Esau? He loses the blessing, right?
Yeah.
Did he deserve the blessing? No.
No.
And so we see that God has a plan. And no matter what the situation is, no matter what the circumstances are, the Lord knows the end from the beginning. And his plan will come to pass no matter what anybody else does.
Perfect.
He
Okay.
tested
He
his people.
fulfills his word. And so
Test-
we
test the
saw
believers.
right in the title of the Torah portion, that this Torah portion is all about Yeshua And his plan is being fulfilled all through this Torah portion. It's all about Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.